Hey everyone, welcome back to Liberal Breakdown. So, Trump just said something in a recent interview that really got my attention. He said, I think Iran is going to be in great danger. Yeah, that's a direct quote. Now, let's stop and actually think about what that means. What kind of world leader goes on record saying something like that? Look, I get it. No one's saying Iran's government is perfect, but threatening an entire country like this? That's not how you de-escalate global tensions. That's how you start another endless conflict. Let's not forget, Trump pulled the US out of the Iran nuclear deal back in 2018, a deal that was working to keep nuclear weapons out of Iran's hands. And now he's acting like we're the victims here? This isn't leadership. This is dangerous bravado that risks dragging us back into war. And we've been down that road before. Iraq, Afghanistan, how many lives do we have to lose before we learn that diplomacy beats bombs every single time?
A lot of people think that those talks are not going to lead anywhere because the Iranians will never give up their nuclear program. If diplomacy fails, is the United States under your leadership ready to take military action to destroy the Iranian nuclear program and remove this threat?
I think if the talks aren't successful with Iran, I think Iran is going to be in great danger. And I hate to say it, great danger, because they can't have a nuclear weapon.
So is that a yes?
You know, it's not a complicated formula. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's all there is.
So is
Can't
the
have
US
it.
ready?
Right now we have
military
countries
action?
that have nuclear power that shouldn't have it. But I'm sure we'll be able to negotiate out of that too as part of this later on down the line. But Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And if the talks aren't successful, I actually think it'll be a very bad day for Iran if that's the case.
And it's not just about Iran. It's about how Trump treats diplomacy overall, like it's some poker game instead of people's lives hanging in the balance. Saying Iran is in great danger, that's not a negotiation tactic. That's a threat. And it's the kind of statement that makes the world less safe, not more. We're in a time right now where we should be using every tool we have to prevent war, to rebuild international trust, and to lead with calm, not chaos. So let's talk about something that's honestly kind of wild when you think about it. Trump is out here bragging about how he's putting tariffs on basically the entire world, Europe, China, even our closest allies like Canada and Japan. But guess which countries somehow dodged that tariff train? Russia. That's right, no tariffs on Russia. Trump literally said in a recent interview that he didn't put tariffs on Russia, and when I heard that, I had to double check, like, wait, for real?
Sir, can you talk a little bit about your potential meeting with Vladimir Putin? Do you still plan to meet with him? Could that happen in Saudi Arabia? And maybe you could elaborate as well a little bit on not providing tariffs on Russia, sir.
So the reason we're not talking about tariffs with Russia is because we're not doing business essentially with Russia because they're in a war. And I'm not happy about what's going on with the bombing, because they're bombing like crazy right now. They're bombing. I don't know what's happening there. That's not a good situation. So we're meeting with Russia. We're meeting with Ukraine. And we're getting sort of close. But I'm not happy with all the bombing that's going on the last week or so. Horrible. It's a horrible thing.
This guy's out here punishing our allies with these massive trade penalties. He said Europe has to pay us a lot of money, China is taking advantage of us, Canada's got tariffs, even South Korea's caught up in this mess. But Russia? Nothing. No tariffs. Not even a slap on the wrist. And that raises the obvious question, why? I mean, this is the same Russia that hacked our elections, invaded Ukraine, and Trump's still treating them with kid gloves? Look, I'm not trying to sound conspiratorial here, but how do you talk tough on trade while giving Vladimir Putin's government a free pass? It just doesn't make sense. Especially when regular working-class Americans, the very people Trump claims to fight for now, are paying the price for these tariffs at the grocery store, at the gas pump, and in their paychecks. Either you're tough on trade, or you're not. But you can't be tough on the world and soft on Russia, unless, well, you've got reasons.
Yeah, look, I have over a dozen presidents and prime ministers as my clients, and I agree with what Ed just said. There is complete uncertainty about what this guy wants and what he is going to do. The one thing that prime ministers, presidents, and CEOs all have in common is they hate uncertainty. And what you've seen is just beyond uncertainty with the market, wild swings based on comments and bad rumors and all this. And what happens, you can't plan. His whole goal here is I want to bring people back to America. I want to make them create jobs in America. With this kind of uncertainty, when you're not knowing where the tariffs are, you can't plan that. You can't start to make investments that are going to take 5 to 10 years going forward. So all of my guys are sitting back trying to figure out what's happening. And then you kind of look at tomorrow. There's a consensus, the people that I'm talking to, that China's not going to back up today. And that tomorrow, Trump's going to impose more rounds of tariffs. We are finally going to realize we're in a full-blown trade war.
We've all heard the rhetoric. America first, protect American jobs, and so on. But here's the thing. When it comes to the global tariffs that President Trump has put in place, some of the loudest voices against them are coming from the Republican Party itself. A growing number of Republican senators are warning that these tariffs, while intended to bring jobs back to America, might just end up doing the opposite. They're saying it's terrible for America and could be a disaster for jobs. Let's take a step back. Tariffs, taxes on imported goods, are supposed to help protect U.S. industries. But when you slap a tariff on a product, it doesn't just affect other countries. It hits businesses and consumers right here at home. U.S. businesses that rely on cheap imports, think everyday goods like electronics, clothing, and food, see their costs go up. Those higher costs don't just stay on the shelves in stores. They get passed down to you and me, the everyday consumer. Senators like Chuck Grassley and Rand Paul have been vocal about this. They're saying that these tariffs could destroy American jobs because they're increasing the cost of goods and making it harder for U.S. manufacturers to compete globally. And that's going to hurt workers, the very people these policies are supposed to protect. And let's not forget the impact on working-class families. With higher tariffs, the cost of everyday items goes up. Whether it's a bag of groceries or a new pair of shoes, you and I are the ones paying more. It's no surprise that even within the Republican Party, there's growing concern about the economic toll these tariffs are taking. They're starting to see that this policy isn't just hurting China, it's hurting America too. We can have strong policies that protect American jobs, but they need to be smart, not hurting them. It's time to rethink this strategy before more Americans pay the price.
President Trump threatened an additional 50% tariff on China if the communist nation did not withdraw its 34% retaliatory tariff on U.S. goods by today. In response, China said it would, quote, fight to the end and take additional countermeasures against the United States. The world's second largest economy hinted that more retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. could be coming. At the same time, the European Commission has proposed counter tariffs on 25% on a range of U.S. goods in response to President Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum.
You've probably seen it in the headlines. The U.S.-China trade war has been dragging on for years, but things just took another turn. China recently announced a 34% tariff on U.S. imports starting April 10th. And that's not just some small shift, it's a big deal. So what's really going on here? Well, for the past few years, the U.S. and China have been locked in a back and forth, hitting each other with tariffs. On one hand, it's about leveling the playing field. On the other, it's a massive game of economic chess with real-world consequences for everyday people. Take U.S. farmers, for example. China's tariffs on things like soybeans, pork, and cotton have seriously hurt many family farms across the country. And it's not just big business. These tariffs affect people working hard to provide for their families. Farmers aren't the only ones feeling it. Manufacturing workers, small business owners, and even consumers are getting hit. And let's not forget about the cost to consumers. With tariffs on everyday goods, the price of products can go up. And it's not just fancy gadgets. We're talking things like food, clothing, and even medicine. When prices rise, it's regular people who end up paying the price. Now, President Trump has framed all of this as part of his America First approach, pushing for trade deals that favor the U.S., but in reality, it's workers in both countries who are left trying to pick up the pieces. And China, for all its own economic struggles, is responding in kind, adding tariffs to things like coal, oil, and even agricultural products. What's often overlooked in all of this is the way these trade wars affect global workers. The fight between these two economic giants doesn't just hurt them, it hurts people everywhere. Workers in places like Africa, Latin America, and even Europe, who rely on trade with both the US and China, find themselves stuck in the middle of this tug of war. It's easy to get caught up in the drama of who's winning and who's losing in this trade war, but the real losers? It's the workers, the families, and the people trying to make an honest living. Economic nationalism might sound good in theory, but we have to ask, is it worth it when the cost falls on the people who can least afford it? It's not just about who has the bigger economy or the tougher stance. It's about what kind of world we want to live in. A world where we lift up all workers, or one where we just keep playing a game of economic power struggles? We're all connected in this global economy, and if we want to see real progress, we need fair, balanced trade policies that don't leave people behind. The question is, can we break the cycle and create something better? Or are we doomed to repeat this economic tug of war? Leave a comment and subscribe. See you in the next one.